Hey, Spencer, buddy, old pal, old friend of mine.
Yes, Caleb?
Do you want to hear something kind of frustrating?
Sure.
I've been reading the same chapter of Jerusalem all week. And at least 5 pages a day. Again, very long pages. These aren't normal pages. Yeah. I've been reading at least 5 to 10 pages every night.
Yeah?
And I'm still on the same fucking chapter all week. I'm only on like page 260. And I looked, and I think the next chapter is still 30 pages away.
Oh.
And I'm just, oh man, it's just very difficult to make progress. It feels I have over 1,000 pages left of this book.
Yeah, and you're saying like you're getting 5 to 10 pages, like that's a good chunk. Just the way that book is set up, and you still have that long. It's just like, so you have like 30 more pages, and you've been reading 5 to 10 pages every day this week. So originally this thing was close to like 50 page chapter.
I don't even know when I started this. I feel like it was definitely in the hundreds, I think. Maybe I started this chapter like 180, 190. I don't know. I actually did read a whole chapter before this, and it wasn't that long. Because for those who don't know, I picked up Jerusalem after like a year and a half of not reading it. I was like 100-something pages in. But I went back, and the one chapter I read, I flew through that.
You were saying, yeah, one of it was really good.
So that was the chapter I'm on. It started off really good. Actually, the last chapter was kind of difficult. It was all like Wild West stuff, but it didn't seem as long. I don't know. But I am now slogging through it again, and my mind has been wandering. And I just happened to realize, I saw a post. It was about Jack London's life. And you know I have the Jack London collection I've been meaning to read for many a winters now. I always have it on my list, and I just forget about it. Well, old Jack London popped up. It was just a thing about his life, and apparently he died at 40 because he has like weird tropical diseases he got on his adventuring and late-stage alcoholism. But he was like an avid boxer and stuff, which I didn't know. So I looked up Jack London boxing. Hilarious pictures in tighty whities, by the way. Come up when you look that up. He wrote a book about boxing, and then here's my mind wandering. It's 170 pages. I can knock that out in 2 days, especially after reading Jerusalem. I might read that on a Saturday. So now I'm trying to fight off the, because then I got like this Anthony Bourdain Bone in the Throat book, and I have a couple other short books I can read. Like, I kind of want to say fuck you, Jerusalem, but I'm not going to. Stay the course. I'm going to stay the course and cry. But you have been which will go into our, not the topic of the day, but a side topic I want to talk about later. You just read a book you really enjoyed. Do you care to elaborate? Because you sent me an excerpt to read. But
so I read The 10th Justice. It's the first novel from the author Brad Meltzer. I've talked about him before.
You went through this book really quick.
Super quick. A little like a week and a couple of days. It's a political thriller. It's about like this young, law student who gets a clerking job at the Supreme Court and accidentally and unwillingly gives out a decision to one of the rulings to who he thought was a former clerk who used to work with the judge that he, was working with. Turns out no. And since he got that decision, that guy was able to buy like stocks and like, manipulate things that way. So he made a whole bunch of money. And then the kind of cat and mouse of the political thriller of the main character, Ben, trying to find this character and trying to get his revenge, and then trying to get this guy, like, catch him so, that, whenever he does get found out, he will, get in less trouble, because he's caught the guy.
Now, I never pictured you as a political thriller kind of guy.
No, not really.
So the fact that you enjoyed it so much really must prove something to the writing, I would say.
And too, I'll have to admit, like, sometimes when it got into a lot of the heavy, like, politics stuff of just, like, how the different decisions and things are work, I didn't, like, skip through, but I'm just reading, like, I'm just taking this guy's word for this because I have no idea, but...
Now, this excerpt you sent me, you want to give some context here?
It's towards the end of the book, and it's the main protagonist, Ben. He's having a discussion with the guy who got the decision out of him, and if I remember correctly, they're still talking on the phone. And right before this, the expert that I sent to you, they're talking about like the law and what, because like throughout the whole book it's a lot of like what, like how do you decide the law and like what should be, and like and then you get into like Ben is like, well, I feel like the law, and then like I said, that kind of like leads into the little bit that I sent you.
Yeah, all right. And you just found this was a brilliant quote, or because this is somebody talking?
Yeah, because it was somebody talking. Like it was the bad guy talking to Ben.
It's just very rare you ever take a picture or send something to me from something you're reading.
And I just saw it, and after I read that paragraph, I was just like, well, damn, that's some truth. Like,
well, let me read it here. Ben, don't feel. Law is not about feeling. If you learn one thing during your time with the court, you should learn that life is a tragedy for those who feel and a comedy for those who think. Ooh, I do like that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that is true. If you let your emotions dictate your life, you're going to be fucked up all the time in this awful, awful, cruel world. But if you're a thinking man, you will also feel some of the awfulness, but you're going to have to laugh at just how ridiculous life is, because there's so many situations that arise that they're comical.
Yeah.
Even if they're not supposed to be.
And like I said, I just saw that and I was just like, that's like, that's like one of the truest things that I've read in a long time.
I'll have to put that book on my list of books I'll never read, but probably should.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those. Anyway, folks, we have a splendiferous episode for you today. We're going to talk like that the whole episode. Splendiferous! Oh, that hurts my throat. So stick around after this not commercial break. You are listening to the Drunken Right Podcast. Just want to see how fast I can do it. Didn't come out at all.
No.
You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. Should we just eventually change it to DBW Podcast since that's what social media is? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Probably going to get rid of this podcast, start one that's way more successful soon anyway.
Yeah.
Of course, now everybody wants to be interviewed by us for some reason, so I don't know what that's about. Maybe we should go with it and just interview everybody and then lead them to the new podcast. Build up the audience just to switch it.
Just to abandon them. Like a dad going out for a pack of cigarettes and never coming back.
Harsh single mom life. I am your host, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Monterey Monkey Muncher Church. I'm going Joey Diaz with that because he always refers to women's genitalia as monkeys.
Yeah.
So that's what you're munching. Or it could just be regular monkeys if you're one of them monkey eaters. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, dog? I have a question. This is what I was talking about in the cold open. I have a question I want to throw onto your head that you will have a lot of stuttering and ums because you're not prepared for it.
Yes.
And then I will probably interrupt you immediately with mine and then go back to you. Though I should probably bring it up on my phone to get a better idea. But this question is, thy Spencer. I don't think that's the proper use of Old English. What? Fuck, I already forgot the question. Do you like stickers? No. What was the last truly great novel you've read? Like, not a book that was just good, or a book that was like, I really liked it, or I'd read again, but like one that was just great. Hit every fucking notch on your list of what makes a great book.
Oh.
I will bring up my list on Goodreads, and I don't think you catalog on Goodreads, so you don't have a convenient list, so you have to use your very dulled brain. Your very diminished mental capabilities.
Well, just off the top of my head, The Hike.
That was, I would say, you know what? That actually might supersede my answer. I'm not sure, but go on.
Like that one, just off the top of my head, I just remember just really enjoying that. Not like able to put it down, just had everything in it. Well,
let me interrupt real quick.
Okay.
I was originally, what gave me this idea is I was listening to a podcast or something, but I was talking about like great books. But I was thinking of East of Eden because that's just one of my favorite John Steinbeck books, and then really it's probably my favorite American novel I've read. And I was thinking it's probably in at least my top 5 of favorite novels of all time.
Yeah.
And that to me was just a perfect book. I liked everything about it. Was one of those books where I was like, most books you read, you'd be like, the pacing could have been faster, or this could have been fleshed out more. Like, that one just had everything for me. So that was my perfect book. But then you mentioned The Hike, which is so vastly different.
Yeah.
And it's not a long book, but I just enjoyed it so much that I could also throw that on my great books pile.
Is East of Eden, is that like a bigger book?
Yeah, it's 500-600 pages maybe. It's literally like the life of a whole family. Like childhood to adulthood. Actually, before childhood, before the babies are born, I'm pretty sure. And again, that was a weird one for me too, because very heavy Christian influences in that book. Like the characters are pretty much named after Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Like it's like the story of Cain and Abel, but John Steinbeck telling it, and what was modern time when he wrote it, I think. Maybe a little set before, but anyway, just like something I normally wouldn't get into. If it wasn't Steinbeck, I probably wouldn't even read it. But then it turned out I really liked it. I took a lot away from that book. I will give some other, I'm going to go down my Goodreads list here of just recent books I've read and which ones kind of touched me and stuff. Movable Feast I really enjoyed, but that's not a topper. Though I did give that 5 stars. That's not really a novel. That's a memoir. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? No, I would give that a poo-poo frowny pants. I did not care for that, actually. The White Museum, which was a poetry collection, doesn't count for me. Let's see. These are a bunch of comics. Chasing the Boogeyman. Also, I gave 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Not a perfect novel in my opinion. No. Again, perfect is very subjective. Yeah. Just say great. How about that? Great novel. I wouldn't say that was a great novel just because, and I don't want to be that guy. Genre fiction, it would be very hard to have the great novel. Yeah. Like maybe you could say like Slaughterhouse-Five could fall into that kind of category. Yeah, it's kind of genre, but you could still say it's great. Maybe even like a 1984. That's like dystopian, right?
I do believe so, yeah.
This one will be on the line. I will still tip it towards a very great novel, in my opinion. One of the best ever. But there were parts of it where I'm like, all right, come on, move along. So it could easily have fallen down to just an awesome novel. Mm-hmm. That is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Because I read that recently.
I was going to bring up Mark Twain because I knew what you read of him so far you really enjoyed.
Again, way too much N-word.
Yeah.
And honestly, Tom Sawyer in this story fucking pissed me off.
Yeah.
It's like, you fucking jerk. Like, why are you doing all this? Like, when they threw him in there, I was a little, so it was one of those books, like, I liked 99% of it. The Silmarillion, while I gave it a 5-star read, that cannot be a great novel in my opinion, because it's not really a novel. It's fucking history of Middle-earth kind of.
Yeah.
Let's see. That doesn't count. I'm not going to go into Edgar Allan Poe because those are short stories. I read a book called Life of Maggot by Paul Jameson. I think it's too bizarre to be considered a great novel, but I really, really enjoyed it and recommend that to everybody. Henry Rollins' High Adventures in the Great Outdoors. No, that was not a great adventure. Sirens of Titan, I think we could both agree, it was just middling.
Yeah.
Very middle line. Coraline, I'm not going to count that. Dubliners, even though it's a short story collection, I gave that a 3. I did not think that was that great. It was interesting. That's about all I can say about that. The Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. I gave that a glowing 4-star. Not a great novel by any means, but it was worth a read. I can't go through all because I have way too many books because I did read like 50-something books this year.
You did.
So I will summarize all the Lord of the Rings books. If I had to say maybe like Return of the King or The Fellowship of the Rings, I could consider a great novel, though, because it's like all actually supposed to be one big, all 3 books is one big thing. I cannot say that it's it would fall under great novels for me just because the middle book, it did drag for me. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where I could put those down. Yeah. I enjoyed them thoroughly, but I could put those down. Yeah. I'm thinking of books I can't put down.
Yeah.
The Hobbit, on the other hand, was just whimsical enough and fun that I could fly through, but also would not consider that among the greats, just personally speaking, because I know some Tolkien fans will get irate, if you will. But I did really enjoy those, and if someone was to say that was a great novel, I'd be like, you know what, I agree. I wouldn't even fight it. But for me, this wouldn't crack my top 5, I wouldn't think. And if you think of a top 5, that's actually a very hard list to come up with. Another one, which is so ridiculous that it should not be considered a great novel by anyone, was that Norm Macdonald book we read. Yeah. But it was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
So that's where we get into the muddy waters of where does a book just being super enjoyable think of movie wise, like a Clerks 2, just because we brought that up recently. It's not Godfather.
No.
But it's so enjoyable that you probably watch it way more than you'd watch The Godfather. So, I mean, I don't know. That's so weird because, like, art wise, you can't say it's a great novel, but it's so fun. I don't know. It's just that's where we get into the weeds here. Like The Hike would be one of those ones because it's so bizarre and weird. But it was very touching. I like the ending a lot. So for me, I would consider that a great novel. Though if you wanted to expand into the grand richness of literature, you could not say that's a great novel by any stretch of the imagination. Just the way you could say no Stephen King book is actually a great novel. Yeah. Though you might enjoy them thoroughly. But personally, Hike was one of my favorite books.
And I mean, and I think when you get into that topic, that's kind of like, I know, granted, there's those outliers that probably within all lists they probably fall in if that person's read them. But when it comes to, like, you know, your greatest and my greatest, it's all personal taste, and you know what I mean, like.
And another thing I would think has to factor in to what makes a great novel is your desire to read it again. Yeah. Because we read so many books every year. I can't even remember the last time I reread a book. Oh, yeah. I've reread like Moby Dick and stuff from when I was a kid. I read them, and then I read them as an adult. So that's a big stretch, which is how you should read books. But I didn't get this until I started reading The Lord of the Rings. I'm like, this might be a book I would want to read every year. Like, just like all 4 books, Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books. I might want to read those, like, maybe not yearly, every year and a half, 2 years, depending on what I'm doing. So now I'm kind of critiquing things on that because I would read The Hike again. I would read East of Eden every year if I could, like if I had the time and it wasn't such a long book. I probably would. And now I'm starting to get into books where I'm like, wow, it's very strange to want to read a book again, especially like The Lord of the Rings, because I wanted to read them again, like not even a year after I read them. Yeah. So maybe they should be considered in my higher tier of great novel versus borderline just awesome great novel. Yeah. Because I'm sure a lot of those books, too, you'll catch a lot of things you missed. Yeah. Versus The Hike, maybe not so much.
Well, I don't know. I think The Hike would be interesting to read again because now knowing the thing, the like you know what I mean. I think it would be interesting to read it again and see like
the way the characters speak to each other. Yeah. And their dialogue will mean a lot different things now that you know the twist at the end. Yeah. So when you read it, I would imagine you'd pick up different things. I was just thinking more like the richness of the themes and morals. You might not pick. I don't know. You might still. Again, that may be one we just have to read again sometime. Maybe when we do the new podcast, we'll read The Hike again. Yeah. I don't know. And I'm finding now, like when I finish Jerusalem one day,
that's you being mighty positive over there.
I'm just trying to think, like, where would I rank that? Because, again, I'm enjoying it. It's not like it's a bad book or anything. It's just for some reason, it's too dense. You know, it's like when you go to, like, a really fancy restaurant. You get the Death by Chocolate cake or whatever fucking dessert that comes your way that's so rich that you take 2 bites, you're like, that's the best thing I've ever eaten. I can't eat anymore. Yeah. I'm going to get sick. Like, that's almost how I feel about Jerusalem, where it's just like, this is such a dense, thick, heavy book that I don't know if I can continue reading at the fast pace I'm reading because I just keep getting bogged down. Because it's also one of those things where like some of it's written so well that you do want to like savor it, you know? You want to like go back and reread parts of it like, oh, that's really, but then you can't. Yeah. Because it's too much. You'll never get done with it. So that's one of those ones like, how would I ever reread that fucking book?
Hey, Aaron, so you have to worry about just reading it the first, getting it done one time.
Right.
Well, I guess next year you'll be able to have a better idea because, you know, you have this grand plan of reading all these, you know, massive, like, you know, tombs and stuff like that. So you'll be able to say, like, you have a better idea, like, is Jerusalem actually good? You know what I mean? Or, like, do you feel like, you know, it's good because...
I worry I'm going to want to reread Jerusalem for one fact, and that's because I'm going to read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then I'm reading those first because I'm going to read Ulysses, which I have the Cambridge edition, which you saw is the biggest book I've ever seen in my fucking life. It has essays and everything to explain Ulysses, which is a very complicated book. But I'm reading the Iliad and Odyssey first because those, especially the Odyssey, I don't know about the Iliad, but the Iliad's first, so you got to read that. The Odyssey is kind of the structure, from what I understand, of Ulysses. Like, that's, like, you know, the journey and everything. That's, to better understand Ulysses, you have to understand the Odyssey. And to understand Jerusalem better, you have to understand Ulysses and the Odyssey because he drew off of those. So it's like one of those things, like after I read those, do I want to go back and like, maybe not the whole book, but just like, because the way it's written, you could just read random chapters and they're individual stories almost. So I don't know if that's how I'm going to go, but I'm also going to read, once I knock those 3 books out, Don Quixote, which I'm really excited about, which doesn't really have much to do with the other books. Because that was written when Shakespeare was alive, actually. I don't know how much that would draw on like the Odyssey or anything. It might have. And then I'm going to read Milton's Paradise Lost, which I've been really having a hard time not just reading now because it's a poem pretty much, just a gigantic fucking poem.
That's one that I've been wanting to read too for a while. But the whole poem thing has kind of...
I will bring it out later when we're done with the podcast. I would get it now. It's just not on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I'll read you just a random excerpt to see how you feel. Because I also really want to read The Divine Comedy.
Yeah.
But that was one of those things, I think we did that before. I might even read it on air where I was like, is this something you'd be interested in, Spencer? And you're like, I'm not at that level yet.
Yeah.
Like, I want to, but I don't know if I could get to that. But the Iliad and the Odyssey are also an epic poem.
Yeah.
It's just the way they're written is a narrative.
Yeah.
It's more understandable.
Which I think is like, because we've got this whenever we talked about poems before, like, and that's where like my mental block is like those older poems, like I don't, or like, you know, I don't think I'd have a hard trouble with because like you said, they're poem, but they're like narration, like, you know what I mean? They're more like a story. Well, I get phobbed up with poetry is like, you know, like the short, you know, couple lines, like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff is where I always get bogged down with poetry. And
I feel...
What is poetry and how do you do it?
Your mind is probably just structured for straight narrative.
Yeah.
That's all you've ever read.
Yeah.
And going, for me, from my first poem, introduction to poetry, was Edgar Allan Poe. So I read most of his work, and then I went to like Maya Angelou, which is also kind of similar, not in the style, but just, you know, rhyming poetry that might tell a story, but isn't complicated. She wasn't a complicated writer. And then I read a lot of Dylan Thomas, which I only read the non-complicated ones. But the fucking... now, because I have his collection, I've been working through for like 3 years, and it's only like 200-page book. I keep hitting these ones that are so dense and Welsh, and I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck's happening. I don't get it. So, like, we've talked about this before. I can't... A lot of contemporary poetry I read, I just go, why did you just make that a flash fiction story?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, because it's told in a miniature story that just has random cuts instead. All of these people seem to do is they'll have a sentence, cut it off in the middle, and have the sentence in the next line, and maybe cut that in the middle and have the end of the sentence in the third line. And it's just this stilted, jilted fucking, why are we doing this? Sometimes I get it. That's the thing that's also like weird, because sometimes it's a visual thing, and if you read it out loud, sometimes you get it. But a lot of times I'm like, you're just doing that to be a dick.
Yeah.
You wrote a flash fiction story and you just broke it up randomly. That's all I get from it. I've read some awful ones. The one we read off air just earlier was fucking terrible. And I always thought maybe I just didn't understand, but now I have a buddy that writes like pretty good contemporary poetry. And, you know, he went to school and he had a poetry professor and like studied the shit and actually understands it. And I'll send him random ones. I'm like, am I dumb or is this shit? And he's like, no, that's shit. That's shit. That got published.
Phew.
Like, I sent him one that was published in the Paris Review. I sent it to Ashley, and there was 2 of them, 2 poems. And, you know, the Paris Review is one of the most prestigious fucking literary magazines you can get published in. So I sent him 2 poems and sent Ashley 2 poems. Ashley was just like, I hate him. Fucking terrible. Shit, my view. And then I sent him my other buddy, the poetry guy, and he read them. And the one, like, because I was glad I sent it to him because he was able to point out a few things like, okay.
You were able to break it down a little bit.
I was like, well, I get, like, okay, I understand. Like, maybe that's what, you know, there was like a feeling there and some things I missed. But he was like, for both of them, he was like, I feel like these are like unedited or something. Like, these were like first draft poems that just got published. Like, these weren't finished products. They're not polished. And they probably only got published because of the person's name. Maybe they're famous or something. So I was like, that makes sense. So it's not my fault that I didn't get them. They're just not that good. Like, for the publication. Because you read like a Paris Review, you think the top of the top, right?
Yeah.
So why are we getting fucking amateur dog shit? Because it's the famous. So Haruki Murakami could have the most dog shit story, but he'll still get it published in the New Yorker. That pisses me off.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's still a dog shit story. Which I've read things like that from Stephen King, where it's like, oh, he has this story about a magic lamp that kills people, and it's like, oh, that's not a good story though.
I mean, the Mangler.
Again, great name. But yeah, the Mangler, not so good. If I'm extra jazzed up, people, it's because I've been drinking gin, and I don't drink gin, and it seems to liven me up a little. I like it. Bit. Doesn't give me the mush mouth as much as whiskey does, too, so I'm digging that. Thank you, Ryan Reynolds, my new buddy, turning me on to gin. Oh, we actually did have an episode, but I'm not going to get deep into it. Sorry, people. But I found an article I sent Spencer. This was from freezeframefiction.com, and this was from 2015, so I don't know how applicable some of this is for the current market.
Real quick, another before we just get off this, to go back to the original thing of like great books recently. Neverwhere from Neil Gaiman. I read it last year, and that was another one like as of the couldn't put it down, just kept wanting to read it, wanted to see what was happening. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to throw that one out there, before we moved on to the next thing real quick.
That's how I felt about the Graveyard book as well that I read from him. And again, probably can't be considered a great novel, but just in general, it's a great novel.
Yeah.
It's a great book. It's fun to read. It's that's the thing. Fun reads versus what's the great, because, people love to say, Ulysses is the greatest. Finnegan's Wake, unreadable fucking nonsense, is the greatest thing ever written.
If you can't read it.
Yeah, that's when you go into like art house movies. You get them fucking French foreign films. This is such a masterpiece, and you're
the gay cowboys eating pudding from South Park.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe that's. I get the art. I don't get the art, but somebody gets the art. But that doesn't necessarily make a movie great. Same with fiction. So I'm not gonna go here and crib this whole article or anything. I'm just gonna take just the main things. What did I say? Did I even say the name of the article? Things so. I'm tired of seeing in Lit Mag submissions. This was a guest post by Bartleby Snopes Literary Magazine managing editor Nathaniel Tower. I don't know if Nathaniel works for that magazine anymore. I don't know anything.
Did you say his name's Bartleby?
No, he works for Bartleby Snopes.
Oh, okay. Magazine. I was gonna say because I'm pretty sure that's like a Harry Potter person, isn't it?
Right. But since I've been heavy into the submissions lately, I found this article and I sent it to you, Ashley. I sent it to everybody. But I just wanted to go to the topic and I'm just going to talk about them. What editors do, what they're sick of seeing. So if your submissions are getting rejected, it might be for one of these reasons. Number one, death endings. So editors are sick of fucking endings that everyone just dies or the main character dies or there's a sad death. And I can kind of understand, like, why can't we have happy endings, So there you go. Number two, opening with sex or masturbation. I never thought about doing that.
I never, but now I kind of want to start a story just so he was jacking it.
I did start one story like that. Remember for the anthology, I wrote that Walmart bathroom story where a guy's beating it for comedy's sake.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be in a sexual manner, but it is a sexual act.
You should send that to places just to see.
That would get me in the New Yorker. Number three, sentimental cancer stories. I can see a lot of people writing fucking cancer stories because cancer is one of those things everyone's had. For 99% of people have been touched by cancer, whether it's somebody they know or them themselves.
Yeah.
So don't write a cancer story and submit it anywhere. It's not going to get accepted probably. Number four, stories that open with light streaming through the window. I have been guilty of this before, but I can honestly say I don't think I've ever finished any of those stories.
Okay.
I have written stories where it starts off with a light going through blinds or a window or something. I think it might even like a noir story I was writing once. And, you get the dust motes and all that shit. Apparently, a lot of people start stories like that. Editors are sick of it. Old Caleb definitely did that at least once or twice, but I never submitted those anywhere. Number five, stories that begin with someone coming out of a dream or end with someone realizing it was all a dream. A classic trope. I have trouble not with that, but I do like to have dream-like elements in my stories. So I always think of the twist. Not that it was all a dream because that's hog shit, but I do think of he had a dream or whatever. But I could get why that's not a necessarily good one.
Because again, with that and some of those other ones, if done poorly, it's gonna just add to the suck factor. You're gonna have to be a certain quality to use those things, like those tropes.
Yeah. Number six, all-timer stories. I actually have a submission out now. This is the only one I failed to. I failed. I have a story that's about a dementia patient who, it's very like a lyrical prose narrative. It's not so much a story at the beginning, and it's very dreamlike, and it's about a dementia patient thinking about a time in their childhood, and it has like very weird imagery, kind of. Apparently, editors do not want Alzheimer's stories. They are sick of it, and I can, I guess, understand that, especially, which this person says, if you write from the perspective of an Alzheimer's patient, which is kind of what I did, so I'm probably going to expect lots of rejections from this story, and I really like that story, too, which sucks. Number 7, cheating significant other stories. That seems pretty common. And here's some bonus material for you. And this one is a little, some people are going to get mad at the bonus material. Devil God stories. Most stories not most stories, but a lot of stories that I've read have to deal with the devil or God in some way, even if it's not actually a religious meaning.
Yeah.
Good and evil is one of the most basic storytelling elements, which you can say is God and devil. Number 2 here, bar diner stories. We both fail on that.
Yeah.
That's just a good setting for a fucking story. Come on, man.
At least the beginning of the story.
Yeah. Come on, man. References to Nietzsche. Can't say I ever did that one.
Yeah.
Abuse stories. It's just like I get it, but at some point, like, what do you write about now?
Well, I was gonna wait until you got done, and I'm gonna be like, so what can we write about now?
Well, this person says if after this whole list is like, if you don't know anything to write about, you shouldn't be a writer anymore.
Damn, fuck you, my man.
Fuck you, my guy. Stories of thwarted creative genius and bad things happening to trust fund kids. So that is that feller's list. He's an editor. That's what he would reject if you submitted it.
So he'll just reject everything.
Most things. So what do we write about, Spencer? Fuck.
Not anything that I want to write about.
How do you write about human existence? What is the human condition? What would make a compelling story? We can't have drama, because if you have drama, that means you need something to create the drama.
Yeah.
What creates the most common drama in humans? Sickness, religion, politics, and
personal relationships.
So we can't write about those things. We didn't actually say politics, so I guess everything has to be political.
Oh, yay!
So do not write about any of those. So what are some of my favorite stories that didn't have any of those elements?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm at a loss for words now, because that seemed like most things.
Yeah.
I guess you can go Japanese style, early Japanese style, and just write about nature.
Yeah.
Just enjoying nature. Want a good nature story?
No.
Well, you got to be careful, though, because he doesn't want any sunshine.
Yeah, like you can't have
nothing coming through the windows.
Well, because if it can't come through the windows, I'm sure it can't come through like the tree branches or some bushes or anything.
Can't be illuminating the green leaves and see the veins of life flowing through them. That would be gross. Fucking can't do that. No good imagery of nature, because you can't have that sunshine. I don't mean to shit on that guy. I get what he's saying. The article wasn't actually read as shittily as I gave that. Yeah. I just gave the top. I didn't even go into his meanings for him.
We just took the headlines and
I just made it sound like this guy is so exasperated with those stories that he just hates any submission and we reject. No, it would be the writing that's overall quality writing is going to get through regardless of the
I'm sure
what you're writing about.
I'm sure, as you being the one who combed through all the submissions for when we had the website, you could probably agree with some of those things, I imagine.
Honestly, I don't think I ever rejected a single story based on cliches or elements like that. I based it on the writing and if it was entertaining. That was my main focus.
But I mean, like, but have you ever, like, what were you thinking? Just like, oh, goddamn, another fucking, like.
Oh, especially around Halloween time, I did go through a lot of stories that had the exact same fucking premise.
Yeah.
How many haunted scarecrows are there? A lot.
A lot.
So I did reject a lot of those based on that. Like, if you get the exact same thing. So if you're working at a bigger publication, you probably will get the same fucking cancer story over and over. You have to do it in an original way. That's pretty much the gist of it. Another fun thing I wanted to do on here, because I'm going to be reworking an old story, and I was looking at it today, and I fucking cringed so hard at how I started this story, and it made me want to punch myself in the face. You know what? We'll only do one line. How about that?
Right.
Online editing of one line of one of Caleb's random stories from.
Is this a story that I know about, or is this one like you never?
It was for the anthology.
Okay.
It was a Western, or set in a Western time, something like that. Shit, how do I find it?
I don't know, man.
I closed out whatever. This will take a minute, so Spencer, tell the folks what your weekend's looking like.
Work and then probably sleep.
That sounds fun.
No
writing?
No writing.
How's your writing been going, actually?
Other than, like I told you a couple days ago, I've been doing some handwriting in a notepad.
What brought that on? I mean, I know you said it was just easier than going on the Google Docs and stuff, but you wrote a good bit by hand. You know, instead of, you kind of already told me how that happened. How was it? Did you enjoy it? Did you find you wrote differently? Did you, all the bullshit that I always preach about writing by hand, did you find any of that to be true?
It's okay. It was definitely like, I think it would be one of those things, like if the more I would do it, probably like anything else, the more, stuff that I would get out.
Right.
I just always I hate looking at my handwriting, like, and I write so terrible.
I would say it gets better, but you hit a limit.
Yeah.
At least for I did. So
I mean, we're in our mid-30s. Like, our handwriting,
it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, it's not going to suddenly get better.
As arthritis kicks in and eyesight gets worse. All right, Spencer. So I opened this story with a scene.
Okay.
I don't know. Some imagery, I guess. A soft wind gave voice to the stars watching over the world in silence. That's the very first line. Now, why did I make it a singular wind? Just soft wind. I noticed in my old writing, even just up to a couple years ago, I did that a lot. It's like shit that shouldn't be singular, like a wind.
Should just
think of it that way. I said a soft wind. Just think of a wind. That sounds dumb. That's not right.
Yeah.
So my first fix, and also soft. Soft wind is not the right imagery, I would think. How's a wind soft? It's not brushing against you softly. Gentle wind.
Yeah.
Get rid of the A. Gentle wind gave voice to the stars watching over the world in silence. All right. Well, this takes place in the desert, so maybe I want to bring the desert in first. I didn't read the rest of this. I don't remember how it goes, so I don't know if I mentioned the desert. But let's say, and I know this is at night because they're stars. So, gentle wind sang through the desert night, giving voice to stars watching over the world. I'll get rid of the in silence, too, because you already know the stars are silent because they're giving voice from the wind. The wind's the noise. So, no redundancy. So, maybe that's better. So, what do you think? Gentle wind, what'd I say? Gentle wind sang through the desert night, giving voice to the stars. Do I need the watching over the world part, or just maybe that's cut out, too?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, watching over the world might be a little too.
Well, let's see how I continued here. So, my original. A soft wind gave voice to the stars watching over the world in silence. Their presence.
You could even just say the stars watching in silence.
I thought about that, but again, the silence is redundant.
True, yeah, you already said something about taking out the silence.
Yeah, I'll just take out the silence. Because I also, since if I added the desert night, now I'm lengthening. I don't want to lengthen things. I want to shorten them for the most part. So a soft wind gave voice to the stars watching over the world in silence. Their presence ever looming like an open window facing infinity. A lone man held the courage to truly see their beauty for the first time. So if I got, the change, so gentle wind sang through. I like the sang part. I don't know. I feel like that's better than that gives you the imagery of the noise without having to say, So gentle wind sang through the desert night, giving voice to the stars. So their presence ever looming like an open window facing infinity. A lone man held the courage to truly see their beauty for the first time. I don't know if I need to change that line. Presence ever looming like an open. For what he saw that night, 3 distinct orbs twinkling in the cosmos over the great American desert held more significance to him than in any other man. It was a sign that redemption was still possible, but it wouldn't come without struggle. I don't know now if I need the desert night in the first line, since I did mention the great American desert. That would be, again, redundant. Though, I could just say night.
Yeah.
So, gentle wind sang through the night. There we go. That gives you the imagery, and then you build upon that later. That was...
Do you think sang through the night or whistled through the night?
I think sang gives more of
or
a...
sung or
Well, I'm
however.
just because I say gave voice
Yeah.
to the stars, so I feel like sang would give it more of a human quality, more of a melodical quality maybe. The whistle, because I normally would go with whistle, but I know I use whistle later too.
Okay.
I'm sure I bring up wind again. That's one of my fucking tropes that I do in my writing. I'm always talking about the fucking wind. My current story has that a lot. I have it in spades. Normally, I would not open a story with that because this is in italics too. I opened it like that because I think I end, from what I remember, I end the story with like the orbs, but the man, not a plot twist, spoiler, the man dies and he's looking up at those same stars, and it turns out it was all a metaphor for his daughters or kids and wife that died, and it's kind of a revenge story. So now we got a few minutes.
Okay.
Entertain me for 5 minutes.
All right.
I enjoy this kind of thing because this is what I'm going to be doing in my writing workshop probably.
Yeah.
So my actual first opening line, that's not because that's not a prologue, but it's separate, so kind could be a prologue, I guess. So how the actual story opens: the lone man rode into the bare bones town of Rocaroja. There was no hesitation in reaching his first stop, the Diamondback Saloon. He tied his old horse, a stubborn bastard way past its prime, to the water trough out front. Sweat glistened on its white back as the scorching sun took its place atop the noon sky. Sorry, and that's not even finished, but I already find a few things I'd probably change. I don't know bare bones town of Rocaroja is necessary, like the bare bones part.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, I don't know. I don't like the way this sounds. There was no hesitation in reaching his first stop. That seems overwritten maybe.
Verbose.
Not verbose, but just, you know how like when people would be like, it is because he was mad and he would not, instead of saying it's because he was mad and wouldn't, like, just shorten things up. Also, again, I fucking apparently love semicolons, so I'm going to have to fix that. He tied his old horse, a stubborn bastard, and way past its prime. Does it have to be a stubborn bastard, or could it just be stubborn? Does it need to be a bastard? It's a horse. That does give it the imagery of being a mean horse, maybe.
But I also then feel like if it's an old time story, Western story, the calling it a bastard kind
of fit.
Yeah.
That is true. This line: sweat glistened on its back. Sweat glistened on its white back as the scorching sun took its place atop the noon sky. I almost feel like maybe I would just go with sun peaked in the sky. On the noon sky. I don't know if I like the took its place atop. Again, might be okay just on its own, but I feel like when in addition to everything, I'm Alan Mooring and I'm adding too much.
Wordy.
Yeah, it doesn't read very smoothly. The saloon was little more than a wooden shack with 4 walls and a roof, but it had whiskey. That's good. You gotta have the whiskey. And after a 3-day trip through the unforgiving high plains, a few shots of whiskey was more appealing than 20 gold bars. All right, so then this is something that's gonna probably drive me nuts when I edit this. Can I get for you, mister? I did the old timey spelling of like fur, F-E-R instead of for. I'm sure that comes up a lot. So can I get for you, mister? Bottle. The lone man pointed to a brown jug set front and center on the shelf behind the barkeep. Also, this might be one of those instances where I read it and I'm too critical because now I'm more about not necessarily toning down, but trimming down a lot of my work. I'm like, I added one adjective too many, one, descriptor too many. Like, I do that a lot now, and I do find it reads better when you get rid of that stuff. The opposite problem would you have. You will always say you have to add stuff in the post. I always have to cut down. So I don't know if that's a good fix for that very beginning or not, but we'll see. I do like the gentle wind, though.
Yeah.
At the very least, a soft wind is gone.
That motherfucker's out of here.
No more a soft wind.
Well, you know what? That's what first drafts are for.
Yeah. That wasn't a first draft. That was like, I edited that 50 times, I think, before. Again, going back to old work, when you reread it, you're like, God damn, what was it? Because you grow, which is a good thing, though, now, because I noticed things I would change and stuff. If you're going back to work you wrote 3, 4, 5 years ago, and you were like, that's fine. Like, if you're not pointing out things, even if it wasn't actually wrong, but just to you, it's like, oh, no, that's fine. That means you didn't progress or change as a writer. Because you might not get better necessarily once you hit your peak, but you probably will change how you write things. So you'll always notice things that are like, I don't write that way anymore. I wanted to write it like this. Or also, I think it also came with finding my voice as an author and how I want to write stories. That changes things too. because I edited a collection I want to put out I want to test the waters of like the self-publishing things since we're going to do the anthology. I wanted to kind of see how the process was and do a trial run on something that I'm not going to sell.
Yeah.
Just something, just to see how you put it together, how you do the format. Because I don't want to I'm going to put all this time into this big-ass anthology and then I fuck up the formatting.
Yeah.
Or, make it look ugly or whatever. It goes down to covers and everything. If we're doing it ourselves, I need to know how everything works. So I'm gonna do one that's a very short, novella length. I have to add some stuff because it's 12 Nights of Dreams, which was on DPW before. It was more of an experimental, just individual dreams that may or may not have. They're up for interpretation. They don't know if they have meaning or not. Because going back and reading through those, I don't remember writing these. Yeah. But I'd have to do
maybe you were dreaming.
Yeah, but total they were maybe 7,000 words long for 12 of them. They're all flash fiction length. So I would have to add an introduction and maybe I'd do an essay or something try to bump it up to at least 20,000 words to make it, worth printing. And then I'll see, how that process works. But live workshopping, I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't really workshopping. I did all the work.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need somebody to bounce things off of.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to actually go through and edit that whole ass. It's 15,000 words. It's going to suck. It's 24 pages long. Oh. And I have a lot of it in Spanish when I was first learning Spanish. So I'm sure a lot of that I'm like, ew.
Gross.
What did I think that meant what that does? That doesn't mean what it means. That's not what I meant. I probably won't even understand it. I don't know. I just really hope the story's not dog shit.
Yeah.
Because I do know it had a solid ending, but I remember there was a big murky middle where random shit was happening, and I don't know if I'm going to like it. So anyway, folks, I think that's everything. You want to touch on anything else?
No, I think we did all the touching we needed to do.
We talked about great novels, why you can't get anything submitted anywhere ever, no submissions getting accepted. I currently have 10 to 15 submissions out now in the world, which is good. Spencer has one, but it's a beefy one. It's not beefy.
No.
It's a flash fiction. It's not beefy. Any ideas yet on writing stories for submission specifically now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to go more into looking at places that are taking submissions.
Yeah.
To see what I would have to try to.
I feel like you'd probably do better if you found one that was accepting a theme and had a deadline.
Yeah.
They had a set theme. It's hey, this one is going to be about Martians or something. Yeah. And then it's due 6 months from now.
Yeah.
I would give you something to focus on.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it'd be
versus a lot of the ones,
structure.
The ones we've been looking at are just just take anything, and then it's what the fuck does that mean though?
Yeah.
You say you take anything, but when we go on your site, it all looks like the same gobbledygook. I don't want to get angry, folks. If you want to check out our work, you can't. But not anymore. But you can follow us on all social media, which is only actually 3 things: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I always say all fucking. That's just what I have. We don't have Snapchat. We don't have the Tiki Talkie. We don't have the only. Well, you have an OnlyFans.
Oh,
we don't have an OnlyFans. Not DPW. But you can follow all the stuff anywhere at DPW Podcast. We made the big change.
Yes.
So you could do that. And also, if you haven't listened to the last episode, Nick Obregon, it was a fun one.
Yes.
Forgot to bring that up in the intro. People really seem to enjoy that one. And I don't blame them. And I was going to say something else and it eludes me. Must have not been important, Spencer.
Must not. You could always think of it and put it in later in post.
Nah, I never wanted to, though. I just never want to. So I'll end it with this. Read great. Oh, no, actually, ask yourself the question. I should have said that earlier. You folks should ask yourself the question. What do you consider is a great novel that you read? And maybe make a list of 5. Maybe we should do that for next episode. Yeah. Our top 5 great novels. Just personal list.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't have to be the greatest books of all time. Just what you enjoyed. And if you want to share that with us on anything, I would love to hear some idea. Because then I can find some books too.
You're right, yeah.
Because a lot of people's lists are going to be way different than the kind of stuff we read. And I'm always down for that. So anyway, thank you for listening. And check out Spencer's OnlyFans at the Monkey Muncher. The Monterey Monkey Muncher. Almost forgot.
Yeah.
See you later.